Yeah, I mean, yeah, these subjects are crazy, aren't they? They can lead you down so many roads. It's quite exciting. I think just to kind of, I guess, to riff on a few of the things that you said just then, this sort of idea of I could have done otherwise. Um, Obviously, is something that we as humans experience quite a lot. Um, I was reading a book a little while ago by Simon Blackburn called Think. It's a very well known book for an introduction to philosophy. And in that, he has a chapter on free will. And I don't want to do him a disservice here, but I'll try and kind of, I guess, jump into the way that he explained libertarian free will, determinism, and then compatibilism. He touched on fatalism as well, but I don't think we need to get into that right now. So he kind of defined this idea of libertarian free will and then ripped it apart very quickly as this sort of notion that even though that you're limited in kind of your time and place in history, your capabilities, you can't hold your breath infinitely, you can't fly, these sorts of things. Even though there are limits upon the human being, you can still have the ability to do anything you want within that realm. So your limits stop you from doing anything, but within your sphere, you have the ability to choose any option and to go anywhere. He kind of takes that apart in quite an interesting way. We won't go into that right now. He talks about determinism and basically this idea that actually you are causally required or pushed to do certain things. Those causes could be outside of yourself. It could be, from the Big Bang onwards through to your parents, through to you today, right here watching this video. It could also be mental causes, different things firing in your brain that you have absolutely no control of. I'm aware that you could also argue that that is also linked back to the Big Bang, but his sort of premise really is that actually there's this chain of events leading to right now that we have no control of, and therefore we're determined to think and act and be specifically where we are. And he kind of lands on compatibilism in quite an interesting way. And I kind of want to get your take on whether this fits into anything you're saying, because it might be a different sort of compatibilism that we can maybe just brush aside or dive into. So he talks about compatibilism as this idea that, say, I've been speaking now for a few minutes. If I go back to right when I first started speaking in response to what you were saying, I said specific words that I arguably had no control over. In 4 years' time, I'll have gone away and I'll have read lots of books. My knowledge will have completely changed. If I could rewind myself, retaining the knowledge that I've gathered in those 4 years, back to that moment, I'm going to have a wealth or an army of information and resources available to me to do otherwise, to have the ability to reframe my question, to hone things and to push it forwards. And he also basically he kind of talks about compatibilism in this sense where if we could have known otherwise, we probably would have chosen otherwise, but we didn't know otherwise. And therefore, it's almost like this, I could have, but I didn't. I don't know. Does that kind of slot into this? Yeah.
Actually, I think I'll have to. I think I have this book, but I'm not sure that I've read the section on free will. Simon Blackburn came to visit Washington State University when I was there. He gave a Potter lecture, and I got to spend actually a fair amount of time with him, and I communicated a little bit with him afterwards. And we'll talk a little bit, later. I have this like defensive of compatibilism. I call this like 4-level defense that I'll get into, as we get across. But and the highest level is this kind of very sort of like Wittgensteinian sort of response, and it's somewhat inspired by some of his work on truth, and he's a very interesting philosopher. But he's giving, something on like a much lower level here. He's just giving a very, so far, what you've said is just a very solid kind of classical compatibilist defense. And there are a few things that, sort of resonate, like the idea that, with this rollback thought experiment, that if we had it all to do over again, well, we'd do just the same thing, or if we wouldn't, it's not clear, what the advantage would be. That's sort of one way that you can kind of take that rollback. But on the other hand, what's important you're getting a little bit at this concept of John Martin Fisher's concept of reason's responsiveness, that we're responsive to reasons we could have done otherwise in that sense, in the sense that had I wanted to do otherwise, if I was motivated to do otherwise, right? I mean, we're doing this podcast. I'm not going to take off my shirt right now. I'm an older man. It'd be rude. And there are lots of motivations, and so it's not going to happen actually. But I just seemed a little silly to think that I can't do it. If you challenged me, maybe I would do it. Or if you said I will donate, $3 billion to Oxfam, I might do it. And that seems very significant. That ability that we have to respond to reasons, I think, is a characteristic that's kind of worthy of free will. And it's interesting that John Martin Fisher, he's one of these source compatibilists, though, and he's sort of, I would classify him as a cultural libertarian of sorts, in the sense that he aspires to a kind of asymmetry about problems of determinism, but he thinks that causal determinism is at least problematic for the ability to do otherwise. He just locates free will sort of in a different direction. But I think that we could go further with that, and I think that actually Blackburn is going further to a more classical version of compatibilism. And you're not going to. There's a lot that we could say. For a long time, I worked at trying to give an account or an analysis of the ability to do otherwise. I've written some papers on that topic. I think you could talk about contextualist factors that, certain contextualist factors might trigger, certain possibilities as being relevant and others as not being relevant. There are kind of complex ways in which you can talk about it. But I think the main thing is that, if we're going to be, look, even the concept of laws of nature, it really only has teeth if we think that, like epistemic teeth, if we think that these laws are, supported by experiments that are repeatable in some sense. So now there is a concept of ability, repeatability of a scientific experiment. And whatever we mean by that, it's not like hold the past fixed and the laws of nature fixed, and the experiment will be done. There are some of these experiments that will never be repeated, in fact, and they probably, if you held fixed the laws of nature in the past, they would not be repeated, but yet they seem repeatable. So we do have a variety of modal concepts, I think, that are not kind of wedded to this sort of libertarian view of the ability to do otherwise, that are a little bit more flexible, and I think would be a little bit more helpful too in developing. And I really maintain this position partly because of that, because very few people are really working in that area where they're trying to, think of the concept of ability in a way that can even characterize the repeatability of scientific experiments, right? I mean, and Blackburn seems to be, one of them, and I bet he thinks of it on a variety of these other levels that we'll get into as well.
If you enjoyed this clip, then head on over to Locals to access the full conversation right now. Supporters can access the video version, and everyone can access the audio-only version of the conversation. I'll see you over there.